Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the controls of the shuttle, her knuckles white as the alien fleet's tractor beam locked on with unyielding force. Alarms blared in the cockpit, red lights flashing across the dashboard like angry eyes demanding attention. The vessel shuddered under the pull, a relentless drag towards the heart of the enemy armada. "Hold steady, Jax," she barked to her co-pilot, a wiry engineer with grease-streaked hands and a perpetual squint that spoke of countless hours tinkering in low-gravity workshops. Jax Ramirez nodded, his fingers dancing over the auxiliary panels with the precision of someone who had jury-rigged more ships than he cared to count. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice stayed calm, laced with that dry wit that had kept the crew sane through 3 years of deep space diplomacy and tense negotiations. "Aye, Cap. If these bug-eyed bastards want a closer look at humanity, they're getting it. Just say when to punch the overrides." Behind them, Dr. Lila Chen monitored the comms from the jump seat, her tablet clutched like a shield against the unknown. The xenobiologist's sharp mind raced, translating the incoming transmissions in real time with the aid of her custom algorithms. Her dark eyes narrowed at the holographic display, where the alien armada loomed, a swarm of iridescent ships each the size of a small city, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that seemed almost alive, throbbing in rhythm with some inscrutable purpose. "They're repeating the demand," she said, her tone clipped and urgent, betraying the undercurrent of fear she rarely allowed to surface. "Show us your true power or face assimilation." "It's not a bluff, Elena. Their empires conquered a dozen systems. They think we're just another primitive holdout, ripe for the taking." The shuttle shuddered violently as the beam tightened its grip, dragging them inexorably toward the flagship's gaping maw, a cavernous opening lined with jagged protrusions that hinted at docking bays designed for conquest rather than welcome. Elena's jaw set, her brave streak igniting like a fuse in the face of overwhelming odds. She had faced down pirates in the asteroid belts of the outer colonies and solar flares that could strip paint from hulls. But this was extinction-level arrogance, a demand that struck at the core of humanity's fragile foothold in the stars. "We've played nice for months, diplomacy, trade offers, even that damn cultural exchange vid we sent, full of Beethoven and bad poetry," Elena said, her voice laced with frustration. "They want power? Fine. Jax, route auxiliary power to the forward emitters. Lila, prep the distress beacon with the full payload specs." Jax glanced back, his squint turning skeptical, the lines around his eyes deepening in the red glow. "The nukes? Cap, that's our last resort. Earth's brass said only if they force our hand," Elena cut in, her voice steel-hard, unyielding. "This is it. They're not inviting us for tea." The shuttle lurched into the hangar bay, clamps engaging with a metallic groan that reverberated through the frame like the jaws of a trap snapping shut. Through the viewport, Elena saw their leader step forward, a hulking commander with mandibles clicking in what passed for speech among his kind, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chaos in cold, unblinking facets. Lila's tablet pinged insistently. Translating, "Humans, demonstrate your might. Fail and your world joins the collective." The doctor's hands trembled slightly, but she squared her shoulders, cautious resolve hardening her features as she processed the implications. Not just for them, but for the outpost's 50 souls left behind, counting on this desperate gambit. "We can't let them board with the warheads intact," Lila added, her voice steadying as she focused on the task. Jax sealed the airlock, his movements precise despite the tension coiling in his gut like a spring ready to snap. "Emitters charging. But if they breach, we're sitting ducks in here." He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, forcing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Remember that time on Vega Prime? Thought the sandstorm would bury us, but you jury-rigged the vents with nothing but duct tape and spite. Got any miracles left?" Elena didn't smile. Her mind flashed to the crew on the outpost, their faces etched in her memory from the last briefing. Families, scientists, diplomats all betting on her to bring them through. The aliens pounded on the hull, sparks flying from their cutting tools like fireworks in the void, the screech of metal on metal setting her teeth on edge. "One miracle coming up. On my mark, flood the bay with the plasma vent. It'll look like we're surrendering our power source. Give them a taste without the full boom." The pounding intensified, the hull creaking under the assault as if protesting the violation. Lila leaned forward, her voice urgent, eyes flicking to the timer on her tablet. "They're overriding the outer seals. 30 seconds. Mark, Elena said, slamming the release with a decisive thud. Hatches hissed open, and a torrent of superheated plasma erupted into the hangar, turning the air to fire in an instant. Alien screams echoed. High-pitched wails cut short as armored bodies ignited, chitin cracking like eggshells under the inferno. The commander staggered back, his multifaceted eyes widening in what might have been shock or outrage, before the flames consumed him in a blaze of bioluminescent fury. But the beam didn't release. The fleet's core ship shuddered, retaliatory fire lancing toward the shuttle like vengeful spears. Jax yanked the controls, his hands a blur. They're locking weapons. We bought seconds, not salvation. Elena strapped in, heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. Then we make those seconds count. Punch it, straight for their bridge. The shuttle rocketed forward, weaving through the inferno of the hangar. As the alien armada's full wrath awakened, a symphony of destruction unfolding in the cold vacuum. The shuttle's engines screamed in protest as Jax banked hard left, dodging a barrage of violet energy bolts that scorched the hull, leaving blackened streaks like wounds on scarred skin. Alarms blared inside the cockpit, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat urging them to impossible action. Elena gripped the co-pilot's console, her knuckles white once more, scanning the tactical display with laser focus. The alien fleet loomed ahead, a colossal armada of sleek obsidian ships, their formations tightening like a noose around the throat of their prey. Shields at 40%, she reported, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. The acrid scent of overheating circuits filling the air. They're prioritizing us. Bridge is 2 clicks out, but we've got interceptors swarming like flies to a corpse. Jax didn't look up from the controls, his jaw set in that familiar line of grim focus, the one that had carried them through asteroid fields and pirate ambushes alike. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down his temple, but his hands moved with the precision of someone who'd flown worse than this in Sims back on Earth, back when the stakes were just points on a leaderboard. Hang on. I'm threading the needle, using their own debris field for cover. The shuttle plunged into the wreckage of the hangar explosion, twisted metal fragments from the alien corvette spinning lazily in the vacuum, a graveyard of their own making. Jax wove through them with deft touches, the ship groaning under G-forces that pressed Elena into her seat, her vision blurring at the edges from the strain. A lucky shot clipped the rear stabilizer. The deck shuddered violently, and secondary systems flickered offline in a cascade of warning icons. Lost maneuvering thrusters on port side, Elena said, already rerouting power from life support, the air growing stuffy as recyclers whined in protest, their efficiency dropping to compensate. She glanced at Jax. His eyes narrowed, calculating trajectories faster than any AI could manage, a testament to human instinct honed over centuries of defying the odds. Humans didn't have the aliens' neural implants for perfect piloting, but they had that spark, the unquantifiable edge of improvisation. An interceptor, sleek and dagger-shaped, no bigger than their shuttle but bristling with menace, matched their vector, its cannons charging with a telltale glow that lit the cockpit in eerie blue. Bogey on our 6, Elena warned, her fingers hovering over the firing solutions. Locked and loaded. Jax flipped the shuttle inverted in a heartbeat, firing retros in a burst that slung them sideways through the debris, the sudden shift playing havoc with their inner ears. The interceptor overshot, momentum betraying its rigid programming, and he countered with the ventral guns, a hail of kinetic rounds punching through its armor like fists through paper. It erupted in a silent bloom of fire, debris pinging off their shields like hail on a tin roof, each impact a small victory in the storm. Nice shot, Elena said, allowing a quick grin that flashed white in the red light. A brief moment of camaraderie amid the madness. But it faded as the main fleet's point defense grid lit up, a web of lasers crisscrossing the void like a deadly lattice, seeking to ensnare them. The bridge of the alien core ship grew larger on the view screen, a towering spire of iridescent alloy bristling with weapons arrays that seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. Elena patched into the shuttle's rudimentary hack suite, fingers flying over the interface with the speed of long practice. I'm probing their firewalls. If we can spoof a friendly transponder, maybe we slip inside without becoming target practice. Jax nodded, juking around another volley that lit the viewport in violet flashes. Do it, but if that fails, we're ramming the bastards. Humanity didn't climb out of the gravity well to roll over now. Her code wormed through the alien net, mimicking their encryption protocols. Crude by human standards, all rigid logic without the creative backdoors that programmers back home love to leave as Easter eggs. A green light flashed, access granted for a heartbeat that felt like eternity. Transponder active. They're reading us as one of theirs. Elena's pulse raced, adrenaline sharpening her senses to a razor's edge. The shuttle arrowed toward a docking port, the Armada's fire slackening just enough to offer a sliver of hope. But then the deception cracked like thin ice. Alarms wailed anew as the core ship's defenses recalibrated, turrets swiveling toward them with predatory intent. The illusion shattered by some adaptive subroutine. They've got us. Hull integrity dropping. Jax yanked the yoke, diving beneath the bridge's underbelly in a desperate skim. The shuttle grazed the hull, sparks flying where energy bolts raked the armor, the screech of metal audible even through the vacuum. Elena braced against the console, spotting a vulnerability amid the chaos. An exhaust vent, pulsing with the ship's reactor heat, a weak point in their otherwise impenetrable design. Jax, that vent, it's weakly shielded. If we overload it with a torpedo spread. He saw it too, eyes lighting with that spark of reckless genius that had saved them more times than she could count. Bingo! Strap in tight. As the shuttle aligned, the alien fleet closed in, their wrath no longer distant thunder but an immediate storm, closing the noose with ruthless efficiency. Elena armed the payload, the weight of the moment settling like lead in her stomach. One shot to turn the tide or join the debris field as just another statistic. Jax's fingers danced over the controls, locking the targeting reticule on the vent's glowing maw with unerring focus. The shuttle shuddered as the torpedo bays hissed open, the projectiles humming to life with a predatory whine that vibrated through the deck. Fire in 3, Elena called, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow trickling into her eyes. She glanced at the readouts. Hull breaches multiplying like cracks in a windshield, enemy fighters swarming like angry hornets around a disturbed nest. One wrong twitch and they'd be vapor, scattered atoms in the void. 2. Jax's jaw clenched, eyes narrowed on the holographic display, every muscle taut. The alien ship's defenses spat beams of plasma, one slicing perilously close to their starboard wing, the near miss sending a jolt through the frame. The shuttle bucked, but he held the line, that unbreakable human focus kicking in, born of simulations and survival. One away! Elena slammed the launch key, her palm stinging from the force. 4 torpedoes streaked out, silver darts against the endless black, weaving through the defensive fire with programmed evasion patterns born of late-night sims back on Earth, where engineers had poured their souls into outsmarting the stars. The lead torpedo struck first, burrowing into the vent like a needle into flesh, a muffled explosion rippling across the hull, orange fire blooming from seams that shouldn't have existed on such a monolithic structure. The alien ship, a colossal behemoth called the Vexar Primarch, listed slightly, its turrets stuttering as systems overloaded in a cascade of failures. But the others followed, slamming home in rapid succession with mechanical inevitability. The vent erupted in a cascade of superheated gas, the reactor core protesting with a deep resonant groan that vibrated through the shuttle's frame, rattling teeth and bones alike. Alarms blared from the Primarch, a symphony of alien klaxons echoing faintly over comms, a chorus of confusion and alarm. Direct hit! Jax whooped, pulling up hard to evade the debris field now spewing outward like the innards of a gutted beast. Chunks of hull plating tumbled past, some grazing their shields with dull thuds that echoed in the cockpit. That's got a sting, he added, a grin splitting his face for the first time since the beam had locked on. Elena monitored the scans, her cautious nature warring with a surge of triumph that threatened to overwhelm her. The Primarch's power grid was fracturing, secondary explosions chaining through engineering decks, lighting the ship's underbelly in sporadic bursts. But the fleet wasn't idle. 2 cruisers peeled off, vectoring straight for them, weapons hot and unyielding. They're not done. Incoming at 040. We bought time, but we need an exit vector now, she said, her voice pulling them back to reality. Jax nodded, already plotting with swift calculations. The shuttle's engines flared, boosting them toward the asteroid field's edge where the human fleet waited in ambush, hidden among the rocks like predators in wait. But the Vexar weren't blind. Interceptors detached from the cruisers, closing the gap with ruthless efficiency, their sleek forms cutting through the void like arrows loosed from a bow. Evade left! Elena shouted as a plasma bolt lanced toward them, a streak of death in the dark. Jax rolled the shuttle into a barrel turn, the G-forces pinning them to their seats, breath catching in throats. The shot missed by meters, scorching the void where they'd been moments before. The heat bloom visible on the sensors. He grinned through gritted teeth, the adrenaline fueling his quips. Hang on. This is where the fun starts. Spotting a cluster of tumbling rocks from the earlier skirmish, Jax dove straight into the debris, using the asteroids as improvised cover. The shuttle skimming between boulders the size of houses, engines straining against the gravitational tugs that threatened to pull them off course. One interceptor followed too closely, its sleek form crumpling against a rogue fragment in a spectacular failure of judgment. The pilot's scream cut off in a burst of static over open channels. Vexar arrogance meeting human improvisation head-on. Elena patched through to the fleet, her transmission cutting through the interference. This is Shuttle Echo 2, Primarch's venting plasma. We've crippled their core. Request immediate pickup. We've got company hot on our tail. Static crackled for a tense moment, then Captain Reyes's voice broke through, calm and commanding as always, a anchor in the storm. Copy that, Echo 2. We're punching through. Hold for 5 mics, 5 minutes. An eternity with tails on their ass, as Jax would say. He weaved tighter, the shuttle groaning under the maneuvers, every rivet protesting the abuse. A lucky shot clipped their aft stabilizer, sending them into a lazy spin that disoriented the stars outside. Alarms wailed, shields at 30%, critical thresholds flashing. Stabilizers out, Elena reported, fingers flying to reroute power, her mind a whirlwind of diagnostics. I can patch it, but it'll take a sec. Do it fast. They're lining up for the kill shot. Jax fired the maneuvering thrusters manually, fighting the spin with raw muscle memory from his fighter pilot days in the Colonial Defense Force, where one mistake meant a fiery end over some forgotten moon. The lead interceptor loomed in the viewport, its cannon glowing with imminent death. Elena slapped the override, diverting auxiliary power in a desperate surge. The stabilizer hummed back online just as the enemy fired, the timing a heartbeat from disaster. Jax yanked the yoke, the shuttle twisting away at the last instant, the bolt grazing them, melting a stripe across the hull in a trail of molten fury. But they lived, barely. Nice save, she breathed, slumping back for a split second of relief, her chest heaving. Not over yet. Jax eyed the scanner, reinforcements from the human side closing in like a lifeline, but the Vexar cruiser was unleashing a barrage to cover its fighters, a wall of fire seeking to box them in. One more hit and they'd be done, reduced to wreckage drifting among the rocks. In a flash of grit, Jack spotted it. A narrow chasm between two massive asteroids laced with metallic ore that could disrupt sensors, turning their pursuit into a game of blind man's bluff. Going dark. Kill all externals. Let's ghost them. Elena complied without hesitation, the shuttle's lights and emissions dropping to minimal, plunging the cockpit into near darkness, save for the glow of consoles. They plunged into the gap, the walls rushing by in a blur of jagged stone, the proximity alarms screaming warnings of imminent collision. The interceptors overshot, their scans painting false echoes in the ore's interference, buying them precious seconds that stretched into heartbeats of suspense. Then from behind, the thunder of human railguns opening up, the fleet arriving like avenging angels, their salvos tearing through the void. The lead cruiser erupted in a fireball, its escorts scattering in disarray, the balance tipping in a blaze of kinetic fury. Jax whooped again, reigniting systems as they burst free of the chasm, the stars snapping back into clarity. "Clear skies ahead," he said, locking onto the pickup beacon with a relieved sigh. But as the shuttle aligned with the human formation, Elena's console pinged a warning. The Primarch, though wounded, was stabilizing, its self-repair systems knitting wounds with eerie efficiency. Its fleet regrouping for a counterpush, the war for humanity's defiance only just ignited, a spark that could consume galaxies. Jax gripped the shuttle's controls tighter, the vibration of re-entry thrumming through his bones as the human fleet's formation enveloped them like a steel embrace, a momentary sanctuary amid the chaos. Elena's warning light still pulsed on her console, red and insistent, mirroring the adrenaline spiking in his veins, refusing to fade. The Primarch's silhouette loomed on the tactical display, its massive hull knitting itself back together with alien tech that defied every scan they'd thrown at it. nanites swarming like microscopic healers. Captain Reyes, Jax barked into the comms, his voice cutting through the chatter of fleet frequencies. Shuttle Bravo requesting vector to your wing. We've got eyes on the Primarch. It's healing faster than a bad habit, like it's mocking us. Rhea's response crackled back, steady as ever, her tone a balm to frayed nerves. Copy that, Jax. Slot in behind the Saratoga. We've got Mac ready to patch your bird, but keep your heads down. That thing's not done spitting venom yet. The shuttle banked hard, weaving through the debris field of shattered interceptors, shards of alien alloy glinting in the starlight, tumbling lazily like forgotten confetti from a war party gone wrong. Jax's co-pilot, Lila, a wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on her cheek from endless repairs, leaned over her station, fingers flying across the diagnostics with practiced ease. Systems nominal, but that canyon run fried our shields, she muttered, her cautious nature peeking through in the way she double-checked every readout, her brow furrowed in concentration. One more hit like those railgun bursts and we're vapor, scattered to the cosmic winds. Elena shot her a wry grin from the nav seat, her witty edge undimmed by the close call, a spark of levity in the tension. Vapor, please. We're the ones who just danced through a rock blender without losing a limb. Let's not tempt fate with pessimism just yet. The fleet's railguns thrummed in the distance, a rhythmic thunder that shook the viewport, each shot a reminder of the larger battle unfolding. Jax watched as a squadron of human fighters peeled off, their afterburners painting blue streaks against the void, darting toward the fray like hornets from a hive. The Primarch's escorts reformed, their formation tightening like a noose, energy signatures building for another salvo that could shatter their fragile line. Humanity's armada, cobbled together from colony haulers, retrofitted miners, and a handful of proper warships scraped from the defense budget, held the line. But the numbers weren't in their favor. Not yet, at least. It was grit against tech, improvisation against assimilation. Admirals calling a council. Reyes interjected over the open channel, her voice brooking no delay. All section leads to the Saratoga's bridge. Jax, you're with us. Bring your intel on that beast. Every detail counts. Jax nodded to himself, punching in the docking sequence with a few swift taps. The shuttle shuddered as magnetic clamps seized it, pulling them into the Saratoga's hangar bay with a jolt that rattled loose tools. Airlocks hissed open, equalizing pressure, and the ramp dropped with a clang that echoed in the vast space. He stepped out first, boots echoing on the deck plating, Elena and Lila flanking him like shadows in the bustle. Crew tech swarmed the shuttle immediately, sparks flying as they jury-rigged repairs with welders and hasty patches, the air thick with the scent of ozone and hot metal. The bridge was a hive of controlled chaos when they arrived, officers moving with purpose, holo displays flickering with fleet positions and threat assessments. The Primarch's icon pulsed like a malignant heart at the center of the main display, a digital reminder of the threat. Admiral Harlan Kane stood at the plotting table, his grizzled face etched with lines from too many battles across the frontier, his brave resolve shining through in the set of his jaw, unbowed by the odds. Beside him, Captain Reyes conferred with tactical officers, her cautious assessments grounding the room's urgency, tempering bold ideas with hard realities. Talk to me, Jax, Kane said, not looking up from the display, his voice gravelly from years of command. What did you see down there? Every glitch, every weakness, give it to me straight. Jax activated his wrist recorder, projecting the shuttle's feed onto the holotable, the chasm's depths swallowing them whole, the interceptor's desperate chase through the rocks, the railgun barrage that turned the tide in a blaze of destruction. The room fell silent as the footage played, the thunderous impacts drawing grim nods from the assembled officers, a shared understanding of the razor-thin margins. It's adapting, Elena added, her voice sharp and analytical, stepping forward to point at a frozen frame of the venting core. Scans show self-repair nanites, but they're pulling power from its core directly. If we hit it hard enough, we might overload the works, chain the failures all the way to the bridge. Lila crossed her arms, ever the voice of restraint, her xenobiology background lending weight to her words. Or we draw fire and lose half the fleet in the crossfire. We need a feint. Something to pull those escorts away, thin their ranks before we go for the kill. Reyes leaned in, eyes narrowing as she studied the projections, her mind already turning possibilities. Miners. Use the haulers from Epsilon Colony. Load 'em with decoy drones. Make 'em look like a supply run to reinforce the line. Primarch's arrogant. It'll bite, thinking we're desperate and exposed. Kane's fist clenched on the table edge, a spark of ingenuity lighting his gaze amid the weariness. Good. Jax, you're on point with the haulers. Lead the dance. Elena, rig the drones to mimic our signatures perfectly, no seams. Lila, reinforce those birds. Make 'em tough enough to take a pounding and keep flying. The plan snapped into place amid terse exchanges, arguments flaring and fading like muzzle flashes in the night, debates over timings, risks, contingencies all hammered out in the heat of necessity. Jax felt the camaraderie solidify, the kind forged in the crucible of survival. Humans turning scrap into salvation, their differences melting away under shared purpose. But as the council broke, scattering officers to their posts, a fresh alert blared across the bridge. Primarch launching fighters, vectoring straight for the fleet's flank, a dagger aimed at the heart. Time's up, Jax said, clapping Reyes on the shoulder with a nod of respect. Let's show these aliens what grit looks like, up close and personal. They moved as one, scattering to stations with practiced efficiency, the Saratoga's engines humming to life beneath their feet, a deep vibration promising motion. In the hangar, Jax climbed aboard the lead hauler, a hulking beast of a ship renamed the Defiant for the occasion, its cargo bays stuffed with drones and false hope. Elena sealed the bay doors behind him, her grin flashing through the comms link, a touch of her wit cutting the tension. Don't scratch the paint, Jax. We've got a reputation to uphold. The hauler lumbered out into the void, decoys deploying in a swarm that mimicked a full carrier group, holographic illusions flickering to life with deceptive realism. The Primarch's sensors lit up like a Christmas tree, its escorts breaking formation to intercept the bait, drawn in by the promise of easy prey. Jax's hand steadied on the controls, heart pounding in rhythm with the engine's steady thrum, the weight of the feint pressing down. But as the first alien fighters closed in, sleek shadows against the stars, a glitch hit the drone net. Feedback from the Primarch's jamming field scrambling the illusions, turning solid phantoms into flickering ghosts. Alarms wailed in the cockpit, red lights bathing everything in urgency. They're on to us. Lila's voice cut in over comms, tight with warning from her station on a support hauler. Signatures fading fast. We need a new play now, before they turn us into target practice. Jax's mind raced, scanning the hauler's bays on the internal schematic, searching for anything that could be weaponized. The ore processors, industrial lasers meant for cracking asteroids, crude but potent in a pinch. Redirect power to the ore processors, full surge, route it through the main grid, he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. Lila's voice crackled back, laced with doubt born of her engineering caution. Those are mining tools, Jax. They'll melt the emitters before they touch the fighters, could backfire spectacularly. Better than nothing, he snapped, sweat beading on his forehead as the hauler shuddered under fresh acceleration, pushing its bulky frame to limits it wasn't designed for. The alien escorts swarmed closer, their sleek forms slicing through the void like silver knives, energy lances charging with a telltale blue glow that promised swift annihilation. In the engineering bay, Elena wrestled with the jury-rigged cables, sparks dancing from the exposed wiring like fireflies in a storm, her hands calloused from years hauling rock and fixing what others deemed broken. Her grip clamped down on the manual override, determination etching her features. Power's climbing 60%, but the Primarch's jamming is frying the relays. If we push harder, we risk blowing the core, taking ourselves out with them. Do it, Jax ordered, eyes locked on the tactical display, where the closing dots represented death. The lead fighter banked hard, its sensors pinging the hauler's hull with invasive probes. A warning klaxon blared, incoming fire, no time to waste. He yanked the evasive yoke, the Defiant groaning as it rolled to port, a lance beam grazing the dorsal armor and shearing off a sensor array in a burst of molten debris that lit the void. The shot rattled through the frame, lights dimming in the cockpit as power flickered. Jax's teeth clenched tight. That was their long-range scanner gone. No more early warnings in the dark.
Status on the lasers?
He demanded, throttling up to gain distance, the hauler's engines laboring. Elena grunted over the comms, the sound of metal twisting in the background underscoring her effort. Redirect complete. Targeting the closest pair, firing on your mark. Outside, the void churned with false signatures from the faltering decoys, but the aliens adapted fast. their AI learning from each feint. The escort split, two peeling off to flank while the others pressed the assault, relentless. Jax watched a drone illusion shatter under point defense fire, its wreckage tumbling silently into the black. A small loss in the greater gamble. "Mark," he barked, the word sharp as a whip. From the hauler's underbelly, the improvised weapons awoke with a hum. Industrial lasers, broad and unrefined, lanced out. Not the pinpoint precision of military-grade beams, but wide sweeps meant to vaporize asteroid faces. Raw power unleashed. The first caught an alien fighter mid-turn, the beam engulfing its wing in a corona of superheated plasma, the craft's hull glowing white-hot before failing. It spun wildly, engines flaring as internal systems cooked, a spiraling wreck. "Hit!" Lila whooped from the sensor station on her hauler, her cautious streak giving way to raw thrill, the victory a brief high. "Second one's veering, it's blind," she added, tracking the chaos. But the victory was fleeting, a candle in a gale. The Primarch loomed in the distance, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars, a behemoth of curved spires and armored flanks that dwarfed their efforts. Secondary batteries along its hull began to hum, locking onto the hauler with ominous certainty. Jax felt the weight of it pressing down, the alien demand echoing in his mind like a taunt. "Show us your power or perish in obscurity." Another lance struck home, this one punching through the cargo bay's outer seal with surgical precision. Alarms screamed, depressurization imminent, atmosphere hissing out. Elena's voice cut through the din, urgent and strained. "Bay's breached. Sealing bulkheads, but we've got venting ore. It's gumming the laser apertures, clogging the works." Jax cursed under his breath, throttling up to put distance between them and the wolves. The hauler wasn't built for this dance. Its bulky frame protesting every maneuver with creaks and groans, a beast pushed beyond its ken. One escort slipped past the faltering decoys, closing to knife range, so near he could almost see the pilot's sensors probing, analyzing humanity's desperate gambit with cold curiosity. "Adapt the targeting," he said, mind sharpening on the fly, drawing from years of improvising in the field. "Pulse the lasers, short bursts like mining drills. We don't need to one-shot them. Just cripple engines, leave them limping." Elena paused for a beat, then laughed, a sharp, defiant sound that cut through the alarms like a blade. "You're insane, Jax. Routing auxiliary coolant, firing pulses now." The beams stuttered out in rhythmic stabs, each one carving gouges across the encroaching fighter's fuselage, armor peeling back in glowing strips like flesh from bone. The alien craft listed, propulsion failing in a trail of sparks, drifting harmlessly as a broken arrow in the endless dark. Lila's readouts confirmed the kill, a ping of satisfaction. One down, but the Primarch's charging main guns. "We bought seconds, not minutes, make them count." Jax nodded to himself, the cockpit's red emergency lights casting long shadows across his face, deepening the lines of fatigue. The hauler pressed on, lasers humming for the next salvo. Every human aboard betting their ingenuity against the stars' indifference. The aliens had demanded proof. They were getting it. One improvised blaze at a time, a testament to what desperation could forge. Elena gripped the armrests as the hauler shuddered, the makeshift laser array venting hot plasma in erratic bursts that lit the cockpit in fleeting orange. The Primarch loomed larger on the view screen, its crystalline hull fracturing light into prismatic shards that danced across the consoles like mocking fireflies, taunting their efforts. Jax's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power from life support to the engines, the air growing thick and stale in response, recyclers struggling to keep up. "They're locking weapons," Lila reported from her link station, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead dripping onto her controls. She adjusted the targeting overlay, her eyes narrowing at the incoming telemetry, calculating odds in her head. "Broadside salvo incoming, ET 30 seconds. We can't outrun it in this tub," she added, the blunt assessment hanging heavy. Jax didn't look up, his focus absolute. "Then we don't run." Elena primed the decoys, dump the cargo bay chaff, make it look like we're scattering, desperate and done. Elena nodded, her cautious nature overridden by the adrenaline surging through her veins like liquid fire. She punched the release and the hauler belched a cloud of metallic flakes and sensor bait, the debris blooming outward in a deceptive swarm that mimicked a dying ship's last gasp. The Primarch's guns flashed, beams lancing through the void, vaporizing chunks of the chaff but missing the hull by meters, the near misses sending shockwaves rippling the deck. Alarms wailed as secondary shocks from the blasts rippled through, the ship protesting. Close, Jax muttered, twisting the ship into a barrel roll that pressed them all into their seats, G-forces squeezing the breath from lungs. The maneuver exposed the hauler's underbelly, where weld scars from their latest improv gleamed under starlight. Badges of survival. "Lila, what's our window?" he asked, voice strained but commanding. 10 seconds before they recalibrate, she said, her witty edge creeping in despite the strain. A defense against despair. "Plenty of time for you to pull another miracle." "Captain Genius." The ship groaned as Jax aligned for a desperate vector, aiming straight at the Primarch's midsection. Not to ram in suicide, but to skim close enough to disrupt their shields with the hauler's exhaust plume, a gamble banking on human physics against alien precision. The proximity klaxon screamed, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat urging retreat. Elena monitored the strain gauges, her brave resolve shining through as she overrode safeties with a few decisive flips. "Shields at 20%. If we clip them, we won't," Jax cut in, voice terse, brooking no doubt. The view screen filled with the alien behemoth, its energy field shimmering like oil on water. Impenetrable yet vulnerable to the crude. He fired the maneuvering thrusters, the hauler grazing the edge of the shield bubble in a daring skim. A resonant hum vibrated through the frame and sparks erupted from consoles as feedback surged. Electrical ghosts dancing. The Primarch recoiled slightly, its formation wavering as subsystems stuttered, caught off guard by the unorthodox assault. But retaliation came swift. A tractor beam snagged the hauler's flank, reeling them in like a fish on a line, the pull inexorable. The yank sent crates loose in the hold, clanging echoes reverberating up the corridors, chaos below decks. "They're boarding preps," Lila warned, scanning the alien signatures blooming on her display. "Drones launching, small, fast. If they breach, we're done, overrun in minutes." Jax killed the engines, letting momentum carry them closer, turning the trap into opportunity. "Elena, vent the plasma vents manually. Turn our exhaust into a blowtorch. Scorch them before they stick." She hesitated for a split second, the risk flashing in her mind, searing the hull, possibly igniting fuel lines in a chain reaction of their own making. But caution yielded to necessity, the fire in her eyes matching the alarms. Her hands danced across the panel, valves hissing open with a pneumatic sigh. Superheated gases roared out, slamming into the incoming drones like a solar flare unleashed. Metal twisting and exploding in silent fireballs that peppered the Primarch's hull like shrapnel. The tractor beam flickered, overwhelmed, then released with a snap, freeing them. The hauler spun free, tumbling away as Jax reignited the engines, wrestling control back. Cheers erupted in the cockpit, short and ragged, a release of pent-up fear, cut off by Lila's update slicing through. "They're hurt but not out. Main guns recharging. We've got a pursuit wing on our tail, closing fast." Elena wiped her brow, the acrid scent of ozone clinging to her skin like a second layer, the stars wheeling outside in indifferent witness to their defiance. Jax set a course for the nebula's edge, where ionized clouds might mask their signature, a veil against the hunters. One improvisation down, but the cost lingered in the flickering lights and the distant creak of stressed plating. A ship pushed to its limits. The chase pressed on, humanity's grit carving a narrow path through the void, one desperate turn at a time. Jax gripped the controls tighter, the nebula's swirling gases now a hazy shroud around the hauler, purple tendrils of ionized hydrogen licking at the viewport like curious flames, distorting the stars into smeared streaks of light. The cloud's exotic particles pinged against the hull, a constant patter underscoring their flight. "How long until we're blind to their sensors?" he asked, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead, dripping onto the console in salty beads. Lila hunched over her console, fingers flying across the patched-together display, cross-referencing alien tech specs with human sensor data. 2 minutes max, but if that pursuit wing punches through the cloud first, we're sitting ducks, exposed and outgunned. Her words clipped sharp, each one a reminder of the lives stacked against them. Crew in the hold, civilians crammed into every corner from the outpost evacuation, all betting on this ragtag escape through the unknown. Elena leaned forward from the co-pilot's seat, her cautious nature kicking in, tempering the rush with calculation. "We can't just drift. Divert power to the aft thrusters, buy us distance without lighting up the engines full bore." She didn't wait for agreement. Already rerouting flows from non-essentials. Life support dimmed to a murmur, recyclers humming slower, the air growing heavier with each passing second. The ship groaned in response, a deep vibration rattling through the deck plates protesting the strain. Jax nodded, executing the shift with a few adjustments, the hauler surging subtly, weaving deeper into the nebula's embrace like a shadow in fog. For a heartbeat, silence reigned in the cockpit, broken only by the soft hiss of the environmental seals straining against the exotic particles seeping through microfissures. Then alarms blared, short, insistent wails that shattered the fragile calm. Lila's eyes widened, reflecting the glow of her screen. Incoming scan. They're probing the cloud, feeling for us. If they lock on... A fireball erupted on her screen, one of their own decoy drones igniting prematurely in the charged atmosphere, the reaction violent and unforeseen. The blast lit the nebula like a false dawn, signatures flaring bright and betraying their position in a spectacular failure. "Damn it," Jax muttered, slamming a fist on the armrest, the impact jarring his wrist. The aliens' ships, sleek predators in the distance, adjusted course with mechanical precision, their pursuit wings splitting to flank the anomaly, encircling like wolves. The hauler's hull creaked louder, stressed by the maneuver, a faint crack spiderwebbing across a bulkhead panel near the ceiling, a harbinger of worse to come. Helena shot a glance at him, her wits surfacing amid the tension, a shield against panic. "Your plan's turning us into a piñata, Jax. Time for mine. Deploy the cargo nets. Rig them with the spare ionizers from engineering. It'll scatter charged chaff, scramble their locks like a storm in a bottle." Lila paused, processing the idea, then grinned fiercely, the spark of approval lighting her face. "Clever, risky, but we're fresh out of safe options." She patched through to the engine room below, barking orders to the team of techs scrambling in the dim light, their responses a chorus of affirmatives. Moments later, clanks echoed as nets unfurled from the hauler's underbelly, improvised emitters humming to life with a low whine. The nebula crackled in response, EMP bursts rippling outward in erratic waves, a digital blizzard overwhelming alien scans. The lead alien fighter veered sharply, sensors overwhelmed, tumbling off course into the haze. But the second pressed on, undeterred, its beam weapons charging with a predatory glow that cut through the clouds. Jax yanked the ship into a barrel roll, evading the first shot by inches, energy lancing past, scorching the nebula into vivid blues that painted the viewport. "They're adapting," Lila warned, tracking the wing's reconfiguration on her display, the dots shifting with eerie intelligence. One fighter peeled off, damaged by the chaff, trailing plasma like blood and water, a limping casualty. But the cost hit home. A shudder ran through the hauler as secondary systems flickered, the nets drawing too much juice from the core, power levels dipping critically. Elena braced against her harness, the straps digging into her shoulders. "Hold course. We've bought a window. Use it before it closes." The team worked in sync, a well-oiled machine born of trust. Jax piloting through the chaos with steady hands, Lila fine-tuning the interference patterns to maximize disruption, Elena monitoring structural integrity with vigilant eyes. Debris from the fallen fighter tumbled nearby, a grim trophy of human grit, spinning lazily in the ionized soup. As the nebula thickened around them, swallowing the last echoes of pursuit in its depths, the cockpit lights steadied, the alarms falling silent at last. But the crack in the bulkhead widened imperceptibly, a silent promise of repairs that would demand everything they had left. Time, resources, resolve. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the cockpit's recycled air turning stale with the scent of overheating circuits and unwashed fear. The chase far from over. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the cockpit's recycled air turning stale with the scent of overheating circuits and the metallic tang of fear sweat. The hauler groaned as it cleared the nebula's edge, stars piercing the viewport like distant accusations, sharp and unforgiving after the hazy sanctuary. "Damage report," she snapped, unbuckling her harness with hands that trembled just once, a fleeting betrayal of the adrenaline crash. Jax kept his eyes on the controls, fingers dancing over the patched console, pulling data from strained sensors. Hull integrity at 60%. That cracks spiderwebbing. Another hit like that and we're venting Atmo, life support failing in minutes. His voice stayed level, the cautious edge sharpening into focus. No room for panic in the void. No panic, just facts. The way he'd always flown. Steady through the storm, one correction at a time. Lila leaned over her station, holographic displays flickering with alerts, cross-checking against the salvaged alien schematics, sensors picking up a signal ahead. Not pursuit, it's a beacon. Alien design but weak intermittent, like they're calling for help. She glanced up, her witty spark dimmed by fatigue, replaced by the brave resolve that had kept them alive this long, through chases and improvisations, or bait, luring us into a trap. Elena considered it, the weight of command settling heavier than the ship's failing gyros, which whined softly in complaint. The aliens, those sleek, tentacled invaders who'd boarded their colony outpost demanding proof of strength in their endless border games, had pushed them to this ragged edge. A chase through the void, their hauler retrofitted into a makeshift warbird with mining tools and spite. Now with the nebula behind and repairs screaming for priority, this beacon felt like a trap wrapped in opportunity. A siren's call amid the stars. Plot an intercept course, Elena decided, her voice cutting through the hum of straining engines, decisive despite the doubt gnawing at her. If it's them, we end this here. If not, we scavenge what we can. Fuel, parts, anything to get us home. Jax nodded, banking the ship gently, the stars wheeling outside in a slow arc, the maneuver smooth despite the damage. As they closed in, the beacon resolved into a derelict, a splintered alien corvette, its hull scored by the same plasma burns their chaff had inflicted earlier, twisted remnants of battle. Debris floated in lazy orbits around it, catching the light, a wing fragment twisting like a dying fish in the current, silent testimony to violence past. No life signs registered, but power signatures pulsed faintly from the core, a heartbeat in the dark. Docking clamps ready? Jax murmured, aligning the hauler's airlock with careful precision, the connection thudding home like a metallic kiss that vibrated through the deck, sealing with a hiss. Elena grabbed her toolkit, the weight familiar in her gloved hand, while Lila hefted her scanner, its screen glowing softly. They moved as one toward the breach tube, suits sealed against the unknown, helmets clicking into place with finality. The alien corridor beyond was a nightmare of fractured bulkheads and bioluminescent veins that still twitched with residual energy, casting eerie green glows on the walls. Elena led, her beam cutting shadows with a steady sweep, heart pounding against her ribs in rhythm with her steps. Stay sharp. They demanded our power. Let's show them what's left of it. The air recyclers in her suit hummed, filtering out the faint alien stench that seeped through. A low hum built from the depths, and from a side passage shapes stirred in the gloom. Not dead, not all of them. 3 aliens emerged, their forms elongated and iridescent under the emergency lights. Tentacles coiling in agitation like serpents roused. One raised a weapon, its barrel glowing with threat. But Lila was faster. Her jury-rigged EMP grenade arced through the air in a perfect throw, bursting in a flash of electromagnetic fury that dropped 2 to the deck, convulsing in spasms. The third lunged faster than expected, its grip clamping Elena's arm through the suit with crushing force. Mandibles snapping inches from her visor. Pain flared hot and immediate, but she twisted with desperate strength, driving her vibro knife into its core, the blade humming as it bit deep. Bioluminescence sprayed, acidic and sizzling against her suit, eating at the fabric. It slumped to the deck, eyes, facets like shattered diamonds, dimming as it stared up at her in what might have been final defiance. Jax covered the rear, rifle steady in his grip, sweeping for more threats. Clear. But this ship's core is unstable, could blow any second, take us with it. They pressed on, Elena's arm throbbing with each step, the knife slick in her glove, dripping residue. The bridge lay ahead, consoles alive with frantic data streams scrolling in alien script. In the center, a holographic projector flickered to life unbidden, replaying the aliens' earlier demand in looping menace. Show us your true power, primitives. Or perish in the collective's embrace. Lila interfaced her scanner, pulling schematics from the dying systems with quick hacks. Their reactors overloading, feedback from the damage. We can stabilize it, siphon the fuel for our hauler. But it'll take all 3 of us, and that crackback home won't wait. It's worsening by the minute. Elena nodded, ignoring the burn in her suit, the pain a distant roar. Do it. They wanted power? They'll see it consume them first, from the inside out. Wires sparked as they worked, Jax rerouting flows with grim precision, his tools flashing in the low light, Lila decoding locks with her quick mind, fingers a blur on the interface. Helena fusing connections through the pain, her injured arm protesting every twist. The reactor whined, building to a crescendo of instability, but their hands, human, stubborn, unyielding, held it back, wresting control from the brink. Alarms blared shipwide, a cacophony of warnings. The remaining alien crew, hidden deeper in the shadows, triggered a failsafe in desperation. Explosions rippled through the hull, shaking the bridge like an earthquake, bulkheads groaning. A tentacle lashed out from a vent overhead, wrapping Jax's leg and yanking him toward a grinding hatch with mechanical strength. Jax! Elena dove without thought, knife flashing again in a silver arc, severing the limb with a wet snap. He kicked free, gasping through his helmet mic, but the deck buckled beneath them, tilting wildly. Evac now! Lila yelled, yanking the fuel line free with a triumphant tug just as the core hit critical redlining. They sprinted for the tube, the Corvette shuddering like a beast in its death throes, corridors narrowing as plates shifted. Debris pelted their suits. A bulkhead groaned and gave way behind, collapsing in a roar of metal. Elena shoved Jax ahead, then Lila, her injured arm screaming as she sealed the hatch with a desperate slam, the lock engaging just in time. The hauler pulled away with a burst of thrusters, the alien ship blooming into fire behind them. A silent nova against the stars that lit the void in harsh white, fuel tanks full to bursting. But Elena's suit patched hastily with sealant, the burn beneath a raw reminder of the cost, seeping through her thoughts. Power secured, Jax said, voice rough with exertion and relief, slumping into his seat. But we're limping home, barely. Elena stared at the fading wreck through the viewport. The aliens' demand echoed in the void, a hollow taunt now. They had seen it, all right, and paid the price in full. The hauler turned toward Alliance space, scarred but unbroken, carrying their defiance like a banner. The hauler's engines hummed unevenly, a low thrum that vibrated through Elena's boots as she gripped the console, steadying herself against the subtle sway. Jax hunched over the nav charts, his fingers dancing across the flickering display, plotting jumps through the treacherous routes. Lila patched the comms array with strips of salvaged foil from the derelict, her hands deft despite the grime. Alliance space lay 3 jumps away, a beacon of safety, but the alien Corvette's parting gift, a cascade of micro-debris from its explosion, had scored their hull like shrapnel in flesh, tiny impacts adding up to insidious damage. Scans clear for now, Jax muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve, leaving a streak of grease. But if those bastards have friends lurking, we're painting a target with every burst we send, emissions lighting us up like a flare. Elena nodded, her bandaged arm throbbing under the suit's seal, the med patch doing little to dull the ache. The burn from the core breach still itched, a raw line across her ribs, but she pushed it down, focusing on the now. They'd scavenged the fuel cells intact, enough to limp home and prove to the Alliance that humanity could punch above its weight, even against empires. The aliens had demanded a show of true power, some arrogant test in their endless border games, transmissions full of condescension. Little did they know humans didn't bluff. They adapted, they endured. A proximity alert blared suddenly, sharp and insistent, shattering the fragile calm. Lila's head snapped up, eyes wide. Incoming signature, 3 contacts closing fast. Not ours, Vexar scouts by the profiles. Jax's face tightened, jaw clenching. Scouts or reinforcements come to finish what the Corvette started. He slammed a fist on the panel, pulling up tactical overlays with urgent swipes, the hauler's limited sensors straining. The hauler wasn't built for dogfights. It was a workhorse, not a warbird. Its frame more suited to hauling ore than evading death. Their jury-rigged shields might hold for one pass, but not a swarm. Numbers would overwhelm. Elena slid into the co-pilot's seat, ignoring the stab of pain from her arm, the wound pulling taut. Options? We can't outrun them in this state. Engines are redlining as it is. Lila yanked the last connection tight on the comms, sparks flying briefly. Comms are up, barely. I can hail the Alliance outpost at Epsilon Relay, but it'll take a minute to bounce the signal clean through the interference. If we divert power from engines... Do it, Elena cut in, decisive, her mind already turning to survival. Jax, plot an evasion course. Use the debris field for cover. Keep us in the shadows of that wreck. The ship lurched as Jax engaged thrusters, weaving toward the scattered remnants of the Corvette's explosion, twisted metal glinting in the void like a graveyard of alien arrogance, offering scant but vital concealment. Elena's hands flew over the controls, diverting auxiliary power to the point defense lasers. Makeshift at best, cobbled from mining tools in the bays. Their output broad, but unpredictable. One burst could blind a sensor maybe if they got lucky and the gods of chance smiled. The first alien fighter streaked into view, sleek and predatory, its weapons ports glowing with building energy, a hunter scenting blood. A warning ping echoed through the cabin, urgent. "They're locking on," Jax growled, his voice low and tense. "Fire when ready. Make it count." Elena triggered the lasers in a staccato burst, the hauler bucking from recoil like a stubborn mule, the beams lancing out. Sparks erupted on the lead fighter's nose, scorching sensors in a brief pyre, but it pressed forward undaunted, returning fire with precision lances that scorched their flank. Hull plating bubbling under the heat, alarms wailed in response, damage reports scrolling. Lila cursed under her breath, wrestling the comms through the jamming. "Signals away, Alliance, this is Hauler Vanguard. Under attack, coordinates attached. Send backup now, we're on the ropes." The second fighter flanked them in a classic pincer move, closing from starboard. Jax rolled the ship hard, debris clipping their wing in a shower of alerts, the impacts jarring. Elena spotted a gap amid the junk, a dense cluster of wreckage ahead, a natural choke point. Their slingshot through it. "They'll hesitate, buy us space." Jax didn't argue, gunning the engines with a roar, the hauler plunging into the junk like a diver into surf, the void alive with hazards. Twangs of impacts rattled the frame. A panel overhead groaned and split, raining sparks down like metallic rain, singeing suits. The aliens veered, their formations breaking as caution overtook aggression, the debris a deterrent even to their advanced piloting. But the third fighter anticipated the ploy, cutting across their path with ruthless calculation. A direct hit slammed the hauler's side, shearing a stabilizer in the explosion of debris, the ship listing. Lights flickered, gravity stuttered, artificial fields failing momentarily. Elena braced as Jax fought the controls, sweat beading on his neck, beating and falling. "Shields at 20%, he reported, terse, voice strained. "We're sitting ducks if we don't shake this one, it's got our scent." Lila grabbed a toolkit from the locker, scrambling to the engineering hatch with purpose. "Rerouting emergency power, hold her steady, Jax." "Give me a moment." Elena locked eyes with Jax across the console, a silent pact in the chaos. "On my mark, full burn and vector flip." She watched the fighter close, its cannon charging with ominous glow, the distance vanishing. Humans didn't have their tech, but they had grit, the will to turn desperation into defiance. She hit the comms override herself, broadcasting on open channels in a bold bluff. "This is human vessel. Back off or see what we're really capable of. Up close." The fighter hesitated, a split second of algorithmic doubt, transmissions flickering. Elena marked it, seizing the opening. "Now!" The hauler surged forward, flipping end over end in a wild spiral Jax barely controlled. The maneuver a gamble with physics. Debris became their ally, slamming into the pursuer's path with brutal force. The alien ship crumpled against a girder, engines flaring out in a silent bloom of fire. Wreckage joining the field. 2 down, but the lead fighter regrouped, trailing them like a persistent shadow undeterred. Jax's hands trembled on the yoke, fatigue creeping in. Fuel's dipping, we push harder, we might not make the relay. Run dry in the black. Elena scanned the readouts, her mind racing through options. The scavenged alien cells catching her eye. They weren't just fuel. Their capacitors could overload in a pulse. A weapon in disguise. Risky, but it might buy time, a final trick. "Lila, can we dump a charge from the cells? Like a decoy burst. Make them think we're blowing." From the hatch, Lila's voice crackled back, muffled by the clang of tools. "Yeah, hotwire the exhaust. It'll look like we're venting core plasma. Catastrophic failure. Fry their sensors for a few minutes, blind them." "Do it." Elena helped Jax steady the course, the relay's beacon a faint promise on the horizon. Growing slowly, the fighter fired again, grazing their tail with a searing beam. The hauler shuddered but held, plating glowing red-hot. Lila's improv worked like a charm. A brilliant azure flare erupted behind them, mimicking a catastrophic failure with deceptive realism, the pulse washing over the void. The alien broke off, scans blinded by the plasma wake, veering wide to avoid the illusory danger, buying precious distance. They broke free at last, the relay growing in the view screen. A skeletal structure of human engineering thrusting from the asteroid's crust, docking arms extended like a welcoming hand amid the stars. Alliance pickets were inbound. Jax's chatter confirmed it, voices overlapping in relief. But as Elena leaned back, the pain in her arm flared white-hot. A lance threw her focus, and a new alert blinked insistently. Structural fatigue in the hull, cracks propagating. They'd survived the gauntlet, but the cost was etched in every groan of the ship, every drop of blood a tally of defiance paid in full. Elena gripped the armrest as the hauler's alarms wailed, a shrill counterpoint to the fading roar of their improvised escape, the sound drilling into her skull. The structural fatigue warning pulsed red on the console, mapping cracked spiderwebbing through the aft hull like veins under strained skin, threatening to split wide. Jax cursed under his breath, fingers flying over the auxiliary controls, rerouting power from non-essentials to shore up the weakened sections with force fields and braces. Relays in visual, he said, voice tight but steady, eyes fixed ahead. Alliance signatures closing, 5 minutes out. We just need to hold her together. No more surprises. Lila emerged from the engine bay, wiping grease from her hands on her jumpsuit, her face smudged but eyes sharp, assessing. Exhaust trick bought us time, but the vents are slag now, fused shut. We're leaking atmo slow, nothing critical yet. But if that fighter circles back, one good hit and we're done. Elena nodded, ignoring the throb in her arm where shrapnel had nicked her during the last hit, blood soaking through the hasty bandage in warm pulses, but she pushed it down. No time for weakness when survival hung by threads. The view screen showed the relay station looming larger, a skeletal arm of human engineering thrusting from the asteroid's crust, its docking arms extended like a welcoming hand, lights winking in greeting. But beyond it, the alien pursuer hung in the void, engines idling as if reassessing the prey. A predator paused. They're hailing, Jax reported, his brow furrowed in concentration, audio only, demanding we power down and prepare for boarding. Say they've witnessed our desperation and want to see our true power up close, arrogant as ever. Elena's laugh was bitter, short, echoing in her helmet. True power? They've chased us across 3 systems thinking we're just scavengers scraping by. Let them come. We've got the relay's defenses waking up, time to teach them a lesson. She keyed the comms, her voice broadcasting calm authority, laced with steel. Negative, Zorath vessel. This is human freighter Endurance. We're under Alliance protection. Stand down or face countermeasures. Your choice. Static hissed back, then a voice, cold, metallic, laced with that alien arrogance that grated like claws on hull plating. Your tricks end here, primitives. We demand demonstration of this ingenuity you boast. Transmit schematics of your drive core, or we vaporize your station, your defiance noted but futile. Lila leaned in close, whispering fierce through the private channel. They're stalling. Scans show 2 more signatures inbound. Their wingmates reinforcing. We bluff or we fight, pick fast. Jax's hands trembled slightly on the yoke, but his jaw set firm, resolve hardening. Bluffs run dry. Arm the point defenses. Give them a taste. Elena waited, the ship groaning beneath them as another microfracture pinged on sensors. The cost already high. Lila's engines pushed to braking. Jax's nav plots burned into his retinas from staring at failing screens. Her own wound a constant fire under the skin. But surrender? Not while breath remained. Not after all they'd clawed from the void. Arm them, she decided, voice resolute. And patch me through to the relay. Tell Commander Reyes we're bringing guests. Uninvited ones. The alien's response came swift. A barrage of warnings in fractured English, threats piling on. Their fighter surged forward, weapons hot, closing the gap with predatory speed. But the relay's turret swiveled to life, slow at first, shaking off standby, then with predatory grace tracking the threat. Bolts of plasma lanced out, not from the station alone, but from hidden emitters Elena had jury-rigged during their approach, using the hauler's spare fusion cells as bait, drawing fire. The Zorath ship jinked, evading the first volley with agile twists, but Jax anticipated, nudging the Endurance into their blind spot with subtle thrusters. Now, he barked, timing perfect. Lila slammed the auxiliary thrusters, a desperate burst that vented the last of their coolant in a shimmering cloud, disrupting the alien's sensors just long enough. Their hull took a direct hit, armor shearing away in a silent explosion of debris, the craft listing. Alarms blared as the wingmates arrived, sleek predators diving in formation, lasers stitching the void. One clipped the relay's outer ring, sparking wildly as it glanced off. but the other locked onto the Endurance with unerring focus. Elena felt the deck buck, a fresh alert screaming hull breach in Cargo Bay 2, atmosphere whistling. "They're boarding," Jax yelled, sealing bulkheads with urgent commands, the ship compartmentalizing the damage. Elena grabbed a pulse rifle from the locker, her vision blurring from blood loss, the world tilting slightly. "Lila, lock down engineering, keep them out." Jax, cover the airlock. "We show them our power. Up close, the hard way." The breach alarms howled as the first Zorath warrior forced entry, its exosuit gleaming under emergency lights, tall and insectoid, mandibles clicking in Challenger communication. It raised a plasma lance, barrel glowing, but Elena fired first, the bolt punching through its visor in a spray of ichor. The body crumpling to the deck in a heap, two more poured in through the widening gap, coordinated in their assault, lasers scorching the bulkhead behind her, heat blooming. Jax flanked from the side corridor, his shot dropping one with precise aim. Lila appeared from below, wrench in hand like a club from some ancient tale, smashing the other's helmet with brutal efficiency, the crack echoing. The ship shuddered again, the wingmate outside raking fire across the relay, scoring its frame, but Alliance corvettes streaked in from the flanks, their heavier guns turning the tide. Zorath hulls crumpling under sustained barrages, explosions chaining in the void. Elena slumped against the wall, rifle smoking in her grip, as the last boarder fell, twitching. The cost etched deeper, a scar on the station's hull, lives hanging by threads in the aftermath. But they'd held the line unbroken. Jax helped her up, steadying her while Lila sealed the breach behind them with hasty welds. "They saw it," Elena murmured, defiant even in exhaustion, her voice a whisper. "And they broke, scattered like dust." Elena gripped the railing as the station's emergency klaxons wailed, their piercing tone cutting through the haze of smoke and spent casings that hung in the air like a fog of war. The relay's corridors vibrated with the impacts outside, a constant reminder of the battle raging beyond the hull. Jax was already at the nearest console, fingers flying over the flickering controls, rerouting power from non-essential systems to bolster the outer defenses, prioritizing shields and turrets. "Lila, get that auxiliary shield online now," he barked, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow, trickling down in rivulets. She nodded, sliding under a sparking panel with the agility of someone who jury-rigged half the colony's life support back on Mars, her toolkit clanking. Wires sparked in her face, illuminating her determined expression, but she twisted a makeshift connector from scavenged conduit, her hands steady amid the chaos. "On it. Give me 30 seconds or we're all venting to space. Pick your poison." The Zorath wingmate outside had pulled back momentarily, but not before crippling the relay array with a precise shot. Without shields, the next wave would punch right through, overwhelming the defenses. Elena peered through the viewport, her rifle slung over her shoulder, heart pounding against her ribs like a caged animal. The void beyond was alive with debris, twisted metal from the fallen corvettes glinting under the distant sun, a battlefield's refuse. Alliance ships circled like guardians, their formations tight, but the Zorath fleet loomed larger now, their wedge formation tightening, a spear aimed at the heart. Demands had turned to ultimatums, then outright invasion. Humanity's true power they wanted to see. Fine, let them choke on it, learn the taste of defiance. A tremor rocked the deck suddenly and red lights flashed across the panels. Hull breach in Sector 7, atmosphere hissing. "Jax, that's engineering," Elena said, already moving, rifle at the ready, her wound a dull roar she ignored. He cursed under his breath, slamming a fist on the console in frustration. "Go, I'll hold the bridge, coordinate the pickets. Lila, cover her, don't let them through." Lila emerged from the panel, face smudged with grease and soot, and tossed Elena a plasma cutter from her belt, the tool humming faintly. "Don't play hero. In and out. We've got enough martyrs." Elena caught it mid-stride, flashing a grim smile that didn't reach her eyes, the weight of the weapon grounding her. The corridors blurred as she sprinted, boots echoing off grated floors past sealed hatches and the acrid scent of melting insulation that clawed at her suit's filters. She reached the breach just as the Zorath scout slipped through, a sleek armored figure with mandibles clicking in the thin air, its form silhouetted against the stars. It raised its laser rifle, barrel tracking her movement, but Elena was faster, diving behind a crate of emergency supplies and firing a burst that scorched its shoulder plate, eliciting a hiss of pain or anger. The alien retaliated with a beam that vaporized the crate's edge, heat singeing her sleeve, the fabric charring. "Come on, show me that power you keep demanding," she muttered through gritted teeth, rolling to the side and activating the cutter with a flick. Blue plasma arced to life, humming with contained fury as she sliced through a support beam overhead, the metal groaning before crashing down on the scout's leg, pinning it. It thrashed, mandibles snapping wildly, but she was on it in an instant, driving the cutter into its visor with a sizzle of superheated metal, the faceted eyes shattering. The body went limp, twitching once, but alarms blared louder. More incoming, the breach widening under sustained pressure. Elena sealed the breach with a hasty weld, the cutter's flame sealing plates in glowing lines, sweat stinging her eyes through the helmet seals. She keyed her comm, breath ragged. Breach contained, but they're probing everywhere, testing for weak spots. "Jack's status?" Static crackled briefly, then his voice. "Shields at 40%. Alliance is engaging the lead cruiser. Buy us time, Elena. We're turning the flank." She leaned against the bulkhead, breath ragged, the cutter still humming in her grip like a heartbeat, the heat radiating through her glove. Time. That's all they ever asked for in these scraps, time to think, to adapt, to endure. And humanity always found a way to stretch it, inch by bloody inch against the galaxy's indifference. Lila's voice cut in next, terse and laced with that dry edge she wielded like a blade in tense moments. "Elena, get back here. We've got a crazy idea, your kind of crazy, the kind that just might work." Elena pushed off the wall, a spark of defiance igniting amid the fatigue, propelling her forward. Whatever it was, it had better work. The Zorath were learning, but not fast enough. Not as fast as humans broke and rebuilt. Elena gripped the bulkhead as the deck shuddered under another volley. The Zorath cruiser's plasma lances carving glowing scars across the hull, each impact a thunderclap through the frame. She sprinted down the corridor, boots pounding against the grated floor, the welder clipped to her belt like a talisman against the storm. Lila's voice echoed in her helmet, urgent now, cutting through the din. "Elena, engineering now. We're rerouting the core exhaust through the auxiliary vents. It'll overload their sensors, blind them for a window, give the Alliance their shot." A window. Elena's mind raced, piecing it together in flashes. The Zorath tech relied on precise energy mapping for targeting. Flood their feeds with raw human fusion output, unfiltered and chaotic, and it'd be like staring into the sun, systems frying. "Risky," she muttered, sliding into the lift shaft and dropping the last few meters with a controlled grunt, landing with a jolt that jarred her arm. "Core's unstable already. One surge wrong and we vent ourselves, take the station down too." Jax's comm buzzed in, overlapping. "Alliance reports 2 more Zorath flanks collapsing in. They've adapted, jamming our frequencies hard. We lose the fleet link, we're isolated, fighting blind." She hit the engineering bay doors, which hissed open to reveal Lila hunched over a console, fingers flying across holographic readouts, tracing flows. Jax wrestled with a bundle of conduits overhead, sparks flying from his torch as he sealed connections. The air hummed with the low throb of the engines, sweat-slicked faces lit by the glow of emergency reds, shadows dancing. Elena joined them without a word, yanking open a panel to expose the exhaust relays, tools at the ready. "Talk me through it." "Fast, we're out of seconds." Lila didn't look up, her cautious precision giving way to the fire.